Karen Weatherby stood knee-deep in the Willowbrook HOA community pool at 6:47 a.m., wielding a pool skimmer like a medieval weapon, her silk robe billowing dramatically in the morning breeze. The 42-year-old real estate agent had finally snapped. Yesterday's incident with the inflatable unicorn had been the last straw. "Ma'am, you can't be in there with street clothes," called out Miguel, the pool maintenance worker, his voice thick with exhaustion. He'd been dealing with Karen's complaints for 3 years running. "Don't you lie on me," Karen shrieked, jabbing the skimmer toward a cluster of pool noodles floating innocently near the shallow end. These things are a public health hazard, and that unicorn yesterday, it was practically pornographic." The unicorn in question, a perfectly normal rainbow-colored pool float, had belonged to the Martinez family's 8-year-old daughter. Karen had spent 45 minutes at yesterday's emergency HOA meeting explaining why inflatable unicorns promoted inappropriate fantasy elements in a family community. "The pool rules clearly state," Miguel began. "I am the pool rules," Karen interrupted, her voice echoing off the surrounding townhouses. Several curtains twitched as neighbors peered out at the spectacle. "I've been HOA treasurer for 6 years, and I've personally reviewed every single regulation in this binder." She waved a waterlogged 3-ring binder above her head like a battle standard. The morning sun caught the pool water, creating dancing reflections across Karen's face as she waded deeper, her designer pumps squelching against the pool floor. Her perfectly coiffed blonde bob was beginning to frizz in the humidity, but her determination only intensified. "You want to see what happens when pool regulations aren't enforced," she continued, her voice taking on a manic edge. "You want to see what chaos looks like." Miguel backed away from the pool edge, recognizing the warning signs. In his 3 years of dealing with Karen, he'd learned that her voice went up an octave right before she did something spectacularly unreasonable. Karen reached into her robe pocket and pulled out her phone, waterproof case gleaming. "Fine. If the HOA board won't listen to reason, if they won't enforce the rules that keep this community safe and property values high, then I'll show them exactly what their negligence leads to." She began filming herself, her voice shifting to the sugary sweet tone she used for her real estate videos. "Good morning, Willowbrook residents. This is your treasurer, Karen Weatherby, and I'm here to demonstrate the safety hazards that result from poor pool maintenance and rule enforcement." What happened next would become legendary in the Willowbrook community group chat. Karen, still recording, began systematically destroying every pool float and toy in sight, narrating each action like a nature documentary. The pool skimmer became a sword, the inflatable flamingo became a casualty of war, and the children's diving toys became unauthorized pool modifications. But Karen's masterpiece, her magnum opus of HOA enforcement, was yet to come. 3 hours later, Karen sat in her pristine Honda Pilot outside Richardson's Marine Supply, the engine running while she stared at the lot full of boats. Her wet clothes had been replaced with her serious business outfit, navy blazer, pearl necklace, and the kind of determined expression that had closed 93 real estate deals in the past year. The pool incident had been just the beginning. She'd spent the morning in her home office, cross-referencing every single HOA regulation with the community's current violations. The results were staggering. 17 families had unauthorized decorative elements, 8 had improperly parked vehicles, and worst of all, the community pool lacked proper emergency watercraft as required by County Regulation 247B. Her phone buzzed with another text from the HOA board president, Dave Chen. "Karen, we need to talk. The pool thing this morning was completely unacceptable." She typed back furiously. "What's unacceptable is 6 years of regulatory negligence. I'm fixing your mistakes." The Marine Supply Store's door chimed as Karen entered, her heels clicking purposefully across the concrete floor. The smell of fiberglass and boat wax filled her nostrils, the smell of solutions. "Help you find something?" asked Jerry Richardson, the store's owner, emerging from behind a display of life jackets. He was a weathered man in his 60s who'd seen every type of boat buyer imaginable. but something about Karen's intensity made him wary. "I need an emergency rescue vessel," Karen announced, consulting her phone. County Regulation 247B requires community pools to have immediate access to watercraft capable of emergency rescue operations. Jerry scratched his beard. "Lady, most pools just have those ring buoys on sticks. You talking about a community pool or a lake?" "A pool," Karen said firmly. "But regulations are regulations. I need something that meets the technical requirements, but demonstrates the absurdity of current enforcement policies." "Okay," Jerry said slowly. "What size pool we talking about?" "Standard rectangular, approximately 40 by 20 feet, 4 feet deep at the shallow end, 8 feet at the deep end." Jerry's eyebrows shot up. "You want to put a boat in a community pool?" "I want to demonstrate proper emergency preparedness," Karen corrected. "Show me your smallest motorboat." An hour later, Karen had purchased a 12-foot aluminum fishing boat with a 15-horsepower outboard motor. She'd also bought a marine radio, emergency flares, and a first aid kit that was probably better stocked than the local hospitals. "You sure about this?" Jerry asked as they loaded the boat onto the trailer. "I mean, I've sold boats for 30 years, and this is definitely the weirdest sale I've ever made." Karen's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Mr. Richardson, I've been in real estate for 15 years. I've learned that sometimes you have to make a dramatic gesture to get people's attention. This community has ignored proper safety protocols for too long." As she drove back to Willowbrook, boat in tow, Karen's phone exploded with notifications. The pool incident had been recorded by Mrs. Peterson from her second-floor window, and the video was already circulating in the community group chat. The comments ranged from supportive, "Finally someone enforcing the rules," to concerned, "Has anyone checked on Karen lately?" to downright hostile, "This woman has lost her mind." But Karen felt more focused than she had in months. For years, she'd been the voice of reason in a community that valued comfort over compliance. She'd written polite emails about regulation violations, attended boring board meetings, and watched as her neighbors gradually turned their HOA into a free-for-all. Well, no more. If they wanted to see what happened when rules weren't enforced, she'd show them. If they wanted to ignore safety regulations, she'd demonstrate exactly why those regulations existed. The boat trailer bumped over the speed bump at the Willowbrook entrance, and Karen's smile widened. By tomorrow morning, everyone would understand that Karen Weatherby wasn't just the HOA treasurer. She was the last line of defense between their community and complete chaos. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when Karen arrived at the community pool, boat trailer in tow. She'd spent the previous evening crafting the perfect social media post, complete with citations from county regulations and a breakdown of the community's safety violations. The post had garnered 47 comments overnight, ranging from confusion to outrage to a few supportive neighbors who appreciated her dedication to community safety. Dave Chen was already waiting by the pool gate, his arms crossed and his expression somewhere between disbelief and panic. As HOA board president, he'd dealt with his share of resident complaints, but Karen's escalation had entered uncharted territory. "Karen, what the hell is that?" Dave pointed at the boat, his voice cracking slightly. "Emergency rescue vessel, as required by County Regulation 247B. Karen replied calmly, consulting her clipboard. "I've also brought proper marine safety equipment, emergency communication devices, and a first aid kit that meets Coast Guard standards." "Karen, that's a fishing boat. For a pool. It's a watercraft capable of emergency rescue operations," she corrected, beginning to unhitch the trailer. "Something this community has been without for 6 years, in direct violation of county safety codes." Dave watched in horror as Karen expertly backed the boat toward the pool. Where had she learned to handle a boat trailer? He'd known Karen for 8 years, and she'd never mentioned any boating experience. "Look, I called an emergency board meeting for tonight," Dave said desperately. "We can discuss the pool regulations, maybe form a committee." 6 years, Dave," Karen interrupted, her voice cold. 6 years I've been bringing safety violations to your attention. 6 years of we'll discuss it at the next meeting, and let's form a committee. Well, I formed my own committee. Population, me. A small crowd had gathered as word spread through the community. The Martinez family stood on their balcony, their 8-year-old daughter pointing excitedly at the boat. Mrs. Peterson had her phone out, obviously recording. Even Mr. Sullivan, the reclusive widower from Unit 47, had emerged from his townhouse to witness the spectacle. Karen had anticipated the audience. In fact, she was counting on it. The community had ignored her reasonable requests for too long. Sometimes, she'd learned from her real estate career, you had to create a sense of urgency to motivate action. "Ma'am, I really don't think this is a good idea," Miguel said, appearing at her elbow. The maintenance worker looked like he hadn't slept, probably dreading another confrontation with the woman who destroyed half the pool toys yesterday. "Miguel, how long have you been requesting proper safety equipment for this pool?" Karen asked. "Well, we've got the life preservers and the first aid kit, which was last inspected when? And where's the emergency watercraft for deep water rescues?" Miguel looked confused. "Ma'am, it's 8 feet deep. You can stand up in most of it." "Regulations don't make exceptions for depth," Karen said firmly. "Safety is safety." The boat slid into the water with a surprisingly gentle splash. Karen had calculated the displacement carefully. The pool could handle the volume without overflowing. She'd also tested the boat's dimensions against the pool's width. It would be tight, but it would fit. "Karen, please," Dave pleaded. "This is insane. The insurance company is going to have a field day with this." "The insurance company should be thanking me," Karen replied, stepping into the boat with surprising grace. "I'm demonstrating our commitment to safety compliance. I'm sure they'll appreciate our proactive approach to risk management." She pulled the starter cord on the outboard motor. It roared to life, the sound echoing off the surrounding buildings like a chainsaw in a library. Several windows slammed shut as the motor's exhaust began filling the pool area with blue smoke. "Attention, residents," Karen announced over the motor's roar, her voice carrying across the complex. "This is your tree as your care in with ARB. Conduciting a mandatory safety ID demonstration." The boat lurched forward, and Karen's carefully planned maneuver began to go sideways, literally. The pool's dimensions, while theoretically adequate for the boat, didn't account for Karen's limited boating experience. The boat's bow swung toward the deep end, but its stern caught the pool's edge with a grinding screech of aluminum against concrete. "Oh shit," Dave muttered, pulling out his phone to call the HOA's insurance company. Karen, however, was undeterred. This was exactly the kind of dramatic demonstration the community needed. Let them see what happened when safety regulations were ignored. Let them experience the chaos that resulted from poor planning and inadequate preparation. The boat's motor continued roaring, its propeller churning the chlorinated water into a frothy mess. Karen gripped the steering wheel, her pearl necklace glinting in the morning sun, her expression serene despite the mechanical chaos surrounding her. "Safety first. We LOVBROK," she shouted over the noise. "Safety first." The motor finally died with a wheeze, leaving the pool area in sudden, shocking silence. The boat settled deeper into the water, now only inches from the pool's surface. Karen sat in the pilot's seat, her navy blazer soaked, her pearl necklace tangled with pool debris, her carefully constructed authority dissolving like chlorine tablets. "I just wanted things to be done right," she said quietly, her words carrying across the still water. "I just wanted us to follow the rules." Sofia Martinez broke free from her parents and ran to the pool's edge. "Mrs. Karen, are you okay?" The simple question from the child whose toy she destroyed yesterday broke something inside Karen. She looked at Sofia's concerned face, then at the crowd of neighbors who'd stopped recording and started looking genuinely worried about her well-being. "I'm okay, sweetheart," Karen managed, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry about your unicorn." Dave waded into the pool, his dress shoes squelching against the bottom. "Come on, Karen. let's get you out of there. As Karen stepped out of the sinking boat and into Dave's steadying arms, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: the support of her community. Not because they agreed with her methods, but because they cared about her as a person. The boat settled onto the pool bottom with a final anticlimactic gurgle. Karen stood at the pool's edge, dripping wet and emotionally drained, watching her grand gesture disappear beneath the surface. "So," Dave said carefully, "about those safety regulations." Karen almost smiled. "Maybe we should start with something smaller than a boat." "Maybe," Dave agreed. "But first, let's figure out how to get that thing out of there." As the crowd began to disperse, Karen noticed that Sofia Martinez had left something on the pool deck: a small, hastily drawn picture of a woman in a boat, with the words, "Get well soon, Mrs. Karen," written in purple crayon. The kindness of the gesture hit her harder than any HOA violation ever could. She'd spent so much time enforcing rules that she'd forgotten the people those rules were meant to protect. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to start over. The boat remained on the pool bottom, a 12-foot aluminum reminder that good intentions without wisdom could create more problems than they solved. But as Karen walked home, clutching Sophia's drawing, she realized that some problems were worth solving, not with regulations and confrontation, but with understanding and community. The question was, would the community be willing to give her a second chance? And more importantly, would she be willing to give them one? The answer, Karen suspected, was somewhere at the bottom of the pool, waiting to be salvaged along with her sunken boat and her damaged reputation. The boat had been in the pool for exactly 17 minutes when Karen realized she'd made a tactical error. The aluminum hull, designed for lake water, wasn't responding well to the pool's chemical composition. More importantly, the propeller was creating a whirlpool effect that was slowly draining the pool through the filtration system's intake valve. "Karen, turn off the motor," Dave shouted from the pool deck, his voice barely audible over the engine's roar and the growing crowd of spectators. At least 30 residents had gathered, their phones recording every moment of what would undoubtedly become the most watched video in Willowbrook history. But Karen was experiencing something she rarely allowed herself to feel: doubt. The boat, which had seemed like the perfect symbol of regulatory compliance, was now listing slightly to starboard. The pool water, normally crystal clear, had turned a disturbing shade of brown from the motor's exhaust and churned up debris. "Ma'am, I think we need to get you out of there," McGill called, extending a pool skimmer toward the boat. His expression had shifted from exasperation to genuine concern. Karen looked around at the faces surrounding the pool. Some were laughing, some were recording, and some, like the Martinez family, looked genuinely worried. Their 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, the owner of the destroyed unicorn float, was crying. For the first time in months, Karen felt the weight of her actions. She'd wanted to demonstrate the importance of safety regulations, but she'd created exactly the kind of chaos she'd been trying to prevent. The boat was taking on water, the pool was draining, and the entire community was watching her fall apart in real time. "I can fix this," she announced, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. "This is just a temporary setback. The important thing is that we're addressing the safety violations." But even as she spoke, Karen could feel the boat settling lower in the water. The hull had definitely breached somewhere, and the motor was starting to sputter as water entered the exhaust system. "Karen, please, just turn off the engine and let us help you," Dave pleaded. "We can talk about the regulations later. Right now, we need to get you safe." The word safe hit Karen like a physical blow. She'd spent 6 years advocating for safety, writing reports about safety violations, attending meetings about safety protocols. But standing in a sinking boat in a community pool, surrounded by neighbors who thought she'd lost her mind, she realized that safety wasn't just about following regulations. Safety was about people. It was about Sofia Martinez being able to enjoy her unicorn float without fear. It was about Miguel being able to do his job without being screamed at. It was about Dave being able to lead the community without managing constant crisis.